he said, that's fine, but on one condition, you're not allowed to take any photos out of the windows. This is not a zoo. We're not going on a safari. Like, these are people living their lives. And if I see you pick up your camera while we're in the car, I'm kicking you out and you're walking home.
I won't lie to you, I was pretty nervous to go into this experience, but I'm so glad I did. If you're the kind of person who likes to stay in touristy spots while they travel, this probably isn't for you. Essentially, I saw this listing on Airbnb for a tour that's given by a man who actually used to live in these slums himself. This is so important because look at this alley. It is so narrow and you could easily get lost here on your own. His motivation behind starting these tours was to help break the stigma that comes with growing up in the slums. People can be denied jobs from growing up here and so much more. Essentially, the tour takes you through the different industries of the slums. You get to see daily life there, and then you get to learn a little bit more about the NGOs and organizations that are going in to try to help it. You can easily come to India and try to only see the beautiful parts, but the reality is this is how most of the people in Mumbai live. My favorite part of the tour was playing with the kids here, but I'm not going to show their photos. The profits from this tour also then reinvested back into the community. Would you go on it?
Excuse me, you did a what tour? Like, first and foremost, why are we just skipping past that and going on to the cooking class? Like, you didn't just say you went on a tour of slums. Second of all, do we not see how incredibly, tone deaf this shit is?
Yeah, my favorite tour was the tour of the slums. I loved looking down on all the people in direct poverty, because I know that that's not me.
Congrats, babe. Are you proud of that? Are you proud of essentially treating people like they're in a zoo that you can just pay a little bit of money to onlook them? And you know for a fact that the money she spent on that tour is not going towards lifting those people out of poverty. It's just going into the tour operator's pocket. It's just genuinely insane to me how comfortable people have gotten in posting on this app to the point where they can say loud and proud that one of their favorite parts of their vacation was touring a slum.
I mean, they do the same thing when they do come to Africa, touring places where people of poverty live, just to remind themselves just how privileged they are. Oh, look at those African kids. They do not have anything to eat. So whenever we get home, you must finish dinner. That's exactly what Americans used to tell their kids growing up. Finish your food, Denny. The kids in Africa do not have food to eat. Meanwhile, in reality, the system has been eating off the backs of African people. It never really stopped to build the countries that you live in to becoming global power, to becoming economically strong, is thanks to the backs of Black Africans. They are backed by their strong pound, their dollar, and all of that. Meanwhile, they keep on digging and digging in Africa to build whatever that they want to build or create. And then they don't thank us for that. Okay, they want us to take the blame for the things that are happening. They want us to also not talk about what is actually happening. They want us to also be grateful for the few cents that they give us while giving us high interest, so that we keep on being begging and begging them and begging them. And also, depending on their mood, they might just say, yeah, we'll give you 10 rand. But remember, I need that 10 rand back because it is mine. So that's the kind of partnership Africa has had with Western countries. And also thanks to a Black man in politics who keep on agreeing to this silly arrangement because they want to look like they have power in Black spaces when we know that they don't even have the power to begin with. This is why we have the slums to begin with, the slum tours in Cape Town, the slum tours in Johannesburg, just to remind yourself just how privileged you are. It keeps on happening over and over again, where people just seem to live outside of or inside of their bubble. They never really think of anything else other than the fact that they are living comfortably. I mean, after that slum tour, I'm sure she went and took a bath and relaxed and be like, whew, that was so refreshing to see, and thank the universe just how blessed I am. Meanwhile, it's not even the universe, it's people working overtime to ensure that people in the slums remain in the slums so that you can go and tour there and make your little 5 cent or 5 minutes video, including the 5 cent that you're gonna make from that video that you made, because they're paying you. They don't even pay us for our creativity to begin with. So you wanna put that on YouTube and make a lot of money, because even on YouTube, they don't pay us Africans. They say we don't have the high spending power. They use all of these things that are backed by laws and legislations and all of so forth. But they do that. They do worse than that. There's smacks tourism as well in Western countries, not in Western countries, but in poor countries for people to entertain themselves. They are considered as popular as wine tours, but we never talk about that. We never really talk about anything of sort. You can come to my country and stay over your passport duration and no one will blink an eye because you are you are white. I should say that in English. So we are tired of people spreading their stupid logic that we have to just go by with. But we know that we experience this type of people that we really have to just bear. Because we'd have, like I said, I remember telling somebody, like I made a video about this, that I worked in tourism and the amount of annoyance I would get from Western people, it was too much. There was a time I did not even like Black Americans because of their ignorance. They were just too much for me, like they were just too ignorant for my liking and it was boring. I started opening up to them due to talk, and I started seeing the other side of African Americans. But before that, the ones that would come to South Africa, they were just blunt out ignorant and boring. Like, I just did not want to deal with that type of people. One of the reasons this guy created this tour, he realized that there were much Western people who just wanted to see how poor people live, just to remind themselves that I have a gold spoon in my mouth. Eating gold chicken, wearing gold chains while there's a baby there around surrounded by trash. So this is for your own selfish interest that you're doing this.
It's gotta be illegal to be this ignorant.
B&B experiences were my favorite tour experiences. I did a slums tour.
Just for context, this woman visited India and one of her favorite tourist attractions was experiencing one of the Mumbai slums. It's hearing privileged people say brain dead, tone deaf, things like that with a straight face that makes me want to go on a Hall of Fame intergenerational crash out. It's like saying I went to Chicago, sat passenger side in a track hawk and watched a shootout happen in O Block. Or that I paid for a needle of a homeless San Francisco native and watched them go through the hippie experience. Real suffering and poverty that people have to live through is not an exhibit or a theater for you to enjoy. Imagine you're seeing two kids scrounging through trash for food and clothing, and you're sitting there with your Prada sunglasses and your Birkenstocks, and you're thinking, damn, some people in this world got it really bad. I should be more grateful. And then go on to say with your full chest that it was one of the best parts of your trip. Gloating about it online, saying it was so bad, and then by tomorrow's Pilates class, completely forgetting about it. God didn't bless you with this much money to finance your travels. He was probably hoping that this much covered at least half the amount of therapy that you need to figure out what is wrong with you. And I know people like you know just how beautiful places in India like Kerala and Goa are, but you want to paint this narrative. And in that way, you're no different from these lying CS influencers.
You are not better than poor people. So, this influencer went to India.
You want. B&B experiences were my favorite tour experiences. I did a slums tour and a cooking class.
Yep, in the same sentence, she said, slums tour and cooking class. The poor are not a zoo to go visit. And I want to know, who raised you? Who raised you to think, I'm going to pay money to a tour guide to not only watch poor people, but tell the whole internet that you are so callous, that you went on both a tour of poverty and a place where you get to eat lavishly. I mean, I get it. We live in a colonial state where people like you think much of the global south is quaint and just there to make you feel something. But guess what? One, thankfully you went to only the barest minimum of India. You went to the places where you can get the pictures that will prove that you are a world traveler. India is like a third of the United States. Not every place looks like those slums, first of all. The people who really live there live in places that wouldn't be so different for us than what we live in. Many of the urban centers have people of all different strata. And I only say this because one thing you did was play into every Westerner stereotype of India. Because, hey, then the vast majority of people won't have to put up with you. But the bigger thing you did was center yourself. It's all about you, isn't it, honey? You are the main character. And somehow you perceive some sort of specialness when it was just an accident of birth. I mean, What did you do to be special? You certainly didn't learn about global politics and how so much of the poverty in India is thanks to both the extraction of resources by the British and the destruction of self-rule by the British.
There's a fine line between wanting to learn about a local population and treating people like they're animals in a zoo. If you are paying money to go see people living in poverty, you have to question that at some point, right? How out of touch do you have to be? This is a perfect example that travel doesn't make you culturally sensitive by default. You can travel the whole world and still have a patronizing mentality. You can travel the whole world and still exoticize other people and interact with them as if they exist for your entertainment.
It's really shocking to hear the terms slums tour and cooking class in the same breath, as if they're somehow equal in some way. And what this made me think of is this story I'll never forget that a documentary photographer told to us in college when he came to visit. His name is Mark Asnan, and he grew up in Brooklyn, pre-gentrified Brooklyn in the 60s and 70s. And he did a lot of documentary projects there in the 80s, early 90s. And, tough neighborhoods, but he had relationships with these people. He got to know them. He spent time with them. You cannot take pictures this close without people knowing who you are. You're going to get yourself in trouble really quickly. So anyways, he had someone who had seen his photos and wanted to see the neighborhood. They asked if he would drive them through the neighborhood. He said, that's fine, but on one condition: you're not allowed to take any photos out of the windows. This is not a zoo. We're not going on a safari. Like, these are people living their lives. And if I see you pick up your camera while we're in the car, I'm kicking you out and you're walking home. And it just really stuck with me that, as photographers, as now, content creators, it didn't exist then, obviously, we have to think about people being people. These are real people, and especially with photography and videography, even more than something that's interpretive, like painting, where there's a lot of room for the artist's interpretation. Like, we're representing real people. We have to treat them with respect and dignity. Like, everything that you have going on inside your head and your life and your experiences, every single person has that same level of stuff. And so the respect has to be there to create good documentary photography, street photography, whatever it is that you're making. If you want to tell a story, do it respectfully. This original person was not presenting this in a respectful way.
Everything that they create and also created in other countries was for their entertainment, to just prove to themselves that, we may not be as morally compassed, but we actually have money that we stole and now it's ours. So we just need to remind ourselves that they don't work harder like us. If they did work harder than us, they would have done to us first what we did to them. So that's how they console themselves, people of Sod.